an emergency worker, and I can't forget the death of a patient that turned my mind upside down. I have been working in the ambulance service for 7 years. Over these years, I have seen a lot. I have often encountered difficult cases, but I always thought that I could do something to save people. But what happened on one particularly dark night knocks me out of my usual reality and still haunts me. It was an ordinary evening, although I immediately felt that something was wrong. The shift began as always. My partner and I checked the equipment, filled out forms, and prepared for standard calls. But that call, it will forever remain in my memory. They called from a private house. A middle-aged man, according to the dispatcher, was not breathing. Nothing unusual, we left quickly. But as it turned out later, I should have been afraid of this call. When we arrived at the scene, I immediately realized that something was wrong. The man was already unconscious. His wife was standing in the corner and sobbing, and the room was completely silent, as if all sounds had disappeared. I hurried to the patient and started checking. He had no pulse. I immediately started resuscitation, but then I felt something strange. My hand froze on his chest and I looked to the side. There were several strange objects on the shelf next to the bed. It was something that I couldn't immediately understand. Bottles with dark liquid, candles, a black cauldron, decorations in the form of some symbols. I thought that it could just be some kind of decoration, but at that moment I realized that these objects were clearly not part of the usual interior. Crooked metal objects, decorations with incomprehensible symbols. All this looked like props for some occult ritual. There was nothing that could be called ordinary in the room. Icons with faded images, strange maps and books, the pages of which were covered with mysterious signs. I froze for a moment, but quickly returned to work. I continued to squeeze the patient's chest, but inside me there was a growing feeling that I had found some thread that was leading me somewhere, to a foggy and scary place where I was not ready to be. My wife continued to stand in the corner, her lips moving, and although I could not hear the words, I felt that she was saying something in a foreign language. It was not English, and it did not even sound like any language I knew. It was something ancient, something alien and unfamiliar. The moment I checked the pulse again and found that the patient was still dead, I realized that I could not just leave things as they were. I decided to use the defibrillator. It was necessary to at least try to give this man a chance at life. I grabbed it, but in order to perform the procedure, I needed to rip the man's shirt. As I tore the fabric and opened his chest, I saw something that made my heart clench. There were strange marks on his skin, deep, dark lines that looked like they had been drawn with some kind of tool rather than left naturally. Marks that resembled ancient runes or symbols I had never seen before. Some of them were surrounded by circles, others were intertwined. These weren't random scars or marks from some kind of injury. These were planned. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as I realized that this was all part of some kind of ritual. I froze, still standing over the man, and my eyes searched for any additional details that might confirm my suspicions. There weren't just any marks on his body. They were all over his body, along his neck, on his shoulders, on his stomach. I realized then that this man might never have been just an ordinary patient. He was part of something else, something that had begun before I arrived. My wife was still standing in the corner, whispering something, and it was clear from her eyes that she knew much more than she had told us. I tried to ignore it and continue working, but the feeling of strangeness did not leave me. Something was wrong. The room seemed to be in the air, and even though I was busy saving a life, I felt a chill running through me. A chill that was not from the temperature. It was an internal chill. Eventually, I realized I couldn't bring this man back. We left the house, but I knew there was more to it than just the patient's death. I felt like I was part of something terrifying that I couldn't explain. I never believed in magic or any of that nonsense. I was a doctor. My job was to save lives, not to think about rituals in the afterlife. But that night I doubted it. I doubted that this soul even wanted to be saved. I can't explain it, but there was something in that house that unsettled me. It had never happened to me before. We diagnosed cardiac arrest, a simple, understandable reason. But as we drove back to the hospital, my own heart was beating faster than two. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something else in that house, something I couldn't understand and maybe shouldn't understand. Have you ever had anything like this? This incident has been on my mind. What did I actually see?